Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. So this is basically a bonus episode. All you guys that listen to us regularly know that we had Alden Díaz come and talk to us recently, and there was so much we wanted to talk about that most of it didn't get talked about. So Alden is gracious enough to join us again. So welcome back, Alden. Happy holidays.
Hey, it's not me being gracious. It's you three being gracious to have me back after I.
Yes, because we've been so booked with guests. We had to we had to blow off Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
And Tim Morrison for you. So
you told Dave Filoni, look, you'll wait your turn, cowboy.
you will.
All right. You slam that phone down.
Exactly.
But no, you so kind to have me back. I couldn't stay away. We had a whole plan for the last one, and then we just blew over an hour on announcements and stuff. So
I know.
I'm glad that we're able to reconvene.
Yes.
I mean, those were announcements. I mean, we knew announcements were coming, but we weren't expecting like the scope of all those announcements. So
it needed to be addressed.
It had to. And I have a sneaking suspicion that we might not even get to like our main topic today.
Yes, we will.
Which might still be a good thing though. Like at this point, I think it's better sometimes to not reach the main topic, because then you have a more organic conversation.
Isn't that what Mando season 2 taught us? We don't have to actually get to the end. We just have to enjoy the journey.
Yes, true, and we will. Discuss this.
There are no filler episodes.
Exactly. That is very true.
That is very true.
But yes, happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody. I don't know when people will be hearing this, so just in case, Happy New Year. Hopefully 2021 will treat us a little more kind than 2020 has so far. But before kicking anything off on the Star Wars front, we have to discuss the holiday gift that was the trifecta of releases that we got with the Mandalorian Gallery episode, Pixar's Soul, and Wonder Woman 1984, which finally HBO Max upgraded their streaming service to finally have Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos. Mm-hmm. We can watch it in the best quality possible since we cannot be in movie theaters.
Right.
I don't know about you guys, but I had a fantastic Christmas day with my family watching all those three movies. I don't know if you guys had any initial thoughts on any of them in any order.
In any order.
Who wants to start?
I will volunteer and say that
as a tribute.
And as a complete cop-out, my family did not enjoy watching any of those movies. We didn't saw any of them. No, we haven't seen any.
Okay. I thought you meant they didn't like any of it.
No. Let me rephrase that. We haven't watched any of the movies, so I will back out from this
conversation entirely.
Honesty is the best policy.
Yes.
You could have given just like a fake review without seeing it, like people do on Tomatoes.
You know, Mo had done that with the holiday special. We had our episode of the holiday special, and we were discussing it and going through it. And after the end of the episode, we were all like, "Oh man, that was fantastic!"
Yeah.
And then, like after it, Mo comes clean, and they tell us, "Oh, I actually haven't
seen it yet.
Even watched it. I started watching it before recording, but I couldn't finish, so I had to read the Wikipedia thing. So I just was winging it.
Just winged it.
And we were like, dude, you faked that really well. I mean, you had insights and everything.
But we love them for it. We love them for that.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
wow.
Yep.
We love this journey.
Exactly. The journey takes us anywhere.
It's crazy. So anyway, I went to my mom's house. There was like 5 people. We still open presents and everything with my mom. Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, I was like really looking forward to coming home the 25th and watching Wonder Woman. And kind of halfway through it, me and my husband were like, El Hosbando, sorry. I'm bored. I'm sleepy. I don't know if I'm just in a bad mood, but maybe I'm judging it too harshly. Let's go to sleep, evaluate tomorrow. So we kind of quit halfway, went to bed, came back in the morning, started again, and we're like, I think we were being too harsh. Like that midsection started getting a little bit better, then it started getting worse again. It's like, yeah, I don't know where they're going with this. So I had mixed feelings. Like there were some things that were really good in there, but as a whole, I don't think the movie worked. So I mean, that was my take anyway. What do you think, Alden?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, and it's interesting that you talk about taking that break because one thing that that's not the movie's fault is the fact that I'm in my living room, and that changes everything. I'm not sure that being in a theater would save this one because I think it's script problems, but I do think that if my focus was commanded by the darkness, by not having my phone on, by all of that I would have maybe engaged a bit more, because some of the scenes I was just like, oh, I'll check Instagram while this scene's happening. Like, and I really shouldn't. I really shouldn't.
Yeah. I know.
And that started to really like what was a 2.5-hour movie, which
too long. It was too long.
Should not be.
Yeah.
2.5-hour film ended up being probably like 3:15 by the time I finished it, because I was like, oh, I'll just go grab some grab a drink, pause, come back. And I shouldn't do that. I should have treated it like the theatrical blockbuster it was supposed to be. But it just, I mean, there's stuff in there that works. There's moments in there where you're like, oh, I see what the movie's doing.
Yeah.
But then there's so many moments where I'm like, like this is just, it's both overwritten and underwritten
at the same time.
At the same time. Like there's stuff where I'm like, inside of the Maxwell Lord character is something really, really smart and cool.
Yeah.
But then there's all of this overwritten stuff with the oil climate of the 80s and things like that. Like that stuff, irrelevant. It could have just been a generic politician or businessman.
Yeah.
The cheetah plot, you don't really need in there.
Yeah.
You can and you can't. You need to commit to Cheetah or Maxwell, I feel like.
Yeah.
In some way. It's a wonky movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the runtime, because that was exactly my feelings with it. Because obviously I came into the movie very excited because I loved the
first one was fantastic.
Yeah. And the trailers for Wonder Woman 1984
were fantastic. And the poster was great. And
the music and the colors and everything, it was so vibrant and joyful that I was like really looking forward to it. But those are one of the things that really struck me about the movie, which is it just felt long. And it's not like The Godfather Part 2, which is an extremely long movie, but you don't really feel it. Like this movie just dragged a lot. And like I think movies are falling into that trap lately, that they feel that being longer means that they're better. And if there's something that Mandalorian has definitely taught me, is that you can be short and concise and still talk about a lot of different topics in a short amount of time. But yeah, Wonder Woman, I mean, the music was fantastic. I mean, the score from Hans Zimmer was like
music was solid. And again, like I think I said it on Twitter, the departments, like you're saying, music, costume, production design, background performers, visual effects, except for maybe some of the Themyscira stuff.
Some CGI was a little
but for the most part, I thought that, and Gal Gadot is she's a star. Like she's just magnetic. She sold me on lines that as written are terrible.
Should not work.
But
it's like, but it's Gal Gadot saying them, so yay.
Yeah, like I want her to be, and we'll get into this a little bit in a minute. I want her as a pilot of some kind in Rogue Squadron. Like paint her up as like a Mary Allen, like with some green and some diamonds, or do something.
I would be okay with that.
I would be okay
something
with
like that. But she's great, but it's just, it doesn't have the like there's no, I don't know where the heart is. Like first one, that the heart is no man's land. She emerges and she's taking the whole brunt of everything. Like
and you have that score coming in and her just walking lone, and then the scene that replaces this one is like that Indiana Jones kind of tank chasing scene that
and there's nothing there's nothing gripping about cars running away with oil and like a tank, and the weirdo Steve thing, which is a huge conversation, and just so I guess my ultimate takeaway is that This is the first movie where I think that the best part is the mid-credit scene.
Oh yes,
Where
yes.
that happened.
I had to watch it again because I'm like, wait, did that just happen?
I called my mom, and
Yeah.
because she doesn't care to watch it, but
Mhm.
she needs to know that, and she was like, no, I really like that's such a classy thing to do.
Yep.
Without spoiling it, everybody should see it. But it's
it was fantastic. It was very well done.
The golden armor. It was just a lot of promises that like didn't really come through. So you get the golden armor, and then doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and then it kind of breaks apart.
Yeah,
before you actually use it.
The fact that the story establishes
Yeah.
that the golden armor was able to protect against the entire world of men, and then
suddenly
and then it just ripped apart.
Feathers are falling off of it immediately.
It's
exactly, but it's one of those things that you guys were mentioning. It's like it's set up and in paper it kind of should work, but then the execution falls short because I mean you develop all these plot points with, especially with Cheetah and Chris Pine. I always forget Trevor, I think was his
Steve
character. Steve Trevor, thank you, and then Maxwell. But like none of it makes that emotional impact that it should be doing, especially for a sequel like this, because for me it should have been framed more or less like Spider-Man 2 was in a way, when like Peter's losing his powers and he's kind of happy about it, and there's consequences that he realizes to him not having those powers. But I mean, Diana is losing her powers while Trevor's still around, but it doesn't really stop her from doing anything. She's just getting weaker, but she's still able to succeed with everything. So she's not really facing any consequence with it. So like it kind of also weakens the end for me in a way, because when she's doing that appeal for people to return their powers, she already did it. So I don't know. Like the framing of all those things kind of fell short.
I also think that, like, to your point, the beginning, I mean, I guess light spoilers for the beginning. It starts with a flashback, and it's little Diana doing the Themyscira Amazon like trials, I guess, the Olympics basically, or actually more like American Ninja Warrior. And they're doing this obstacle course. Yeah. And throughout you could see that like little Diana, because she's not grown and large and super strong like these other women, she is using her size, and she's using the fact that she's tiny and she's running and she's fitting through things and sliding under things. And I thought that the movie was trying to set up a journey, which was use who you are, like it's not the powers and all that, which could have connected to what you're saying. But then the movie became about lying and cheating and cutting corners. And I was like, okay, cool, but you're not developing Maxwell. And then you get Maxwell's whole backstory, again, light spoilers, randomly at the end of the movie.
Like,
right at the end.
This one flashback there, it's like, what?
And you realize that he's like this immigrant upstart and all these things, and he was bullied for not speaking English and all this stuff that could have connected him and Diana as being like outsiders in America, and they don't do anything with that.
Like, just like you were saying, they developed the oil tycoon thing instead of developing him as a person.
His
so he
father
can be sympathetic since the beginning.
Everything.
Like, you think that he's a bad dad for no reason. Like, he forgets that he has
you don't see his motivations or anything. You don't get his motivations at all at the beginning. It's like, do you just want power? But then you're saying to your son that you want your son to see that you're great. But so there's a disconnect there. And at the very end, it's like, oh, that's why I would have felt better knowing that earlier.
That's the thing, because then Maxwell and Cheetah, like Kristen Wiig's character, I forgot her actual name, sorry, are the dualities of the interior dualities of Diana, right? The outward exterior and Cheetah in Wonder Woman, and then the outsider person, immigrant from Maxwell in Diana. So those are the two parts of her that she's kind of like battling in this movie, but in neither one of them, those characteristics were developed in a way
it's not fleshed out.
Diana can empathize with both, because I feel like they were doing that in a way with Cheetah, but then they kind of lost it.
Because they're trying to do Batman Returns, they're trying to do like Batman Returns. It's the Penguin is the other son of Gotham who was discarded by his parents instead of him losing his parents. The parents got rid of him. He's the inverse of Bruce in that way, and then obviously Catwoman is the inverse of Bruce in the costumed way. And I like when they do these trinities, these triads, if you will, of characters. Last Jedi was all about the triads.
Mhm.
You know,
Yes.
it's Luke, Kylo, Rey,
Yeah.
Holdo,
Mhm.
Leia, Poe. You know, Finn, Rose,
Mhm.
DJ. He did that for a reason.
Mhm.
And this one's just. I described this movie as it's not unwatchable. It does have fun parts, but it's
Yeah.
basically throwing down train track while the train is coming.
Which is the
Yeah.
opposite of Soul for me, because Soul, I watched it the
Ugh.
same day and like I
Soul
was
was great.
blown away. It was
Ugh.
such a masterpiece
It's
for
so
me.
good.
Yeah.
From the story, which obviously was, I mean, it's Pixar. I expected there was going to be a moment where I was going to be, pull my heartstrings right there. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
the character designs, it was such an artful movie, more so than any of the other Pixar films that I've seen so far. Because I'm gonna admit that I have not seen the Car films. Sorry, I'm not gonna watch them.
That's not where I would go for art.
Exactly. But Soul, I mean, what did you guys think?
I thought it was beautiful. That I think Pixar's always had issues with animating humans, and this
Mhm.
time they nailed it. Like they got humans down, and then combining that with how they made the souls look was great, and then combining that with the whatever interstellar beings they were that were just
like Cubist,
lines.
Picasso things.
Oh,
Yeah.
they were fantastic, and how they flowed and
Yeah.
worked with their surroundings was done so well. I mean, as we were watching, it's like they did Interstellar even better. As you go through the dimensions, and I thought it was great. And then obviously there's always
It's set in the same
story to
universe as
it.
Interstellar, clearly. Yeah. It's part of the
Christopher
Christopher
Nolan's
Nolan.
Pixar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
tell you.
it was, and then obviously with the background of jazz and
Yeah.
Mm.
All of that was just so beautiful. I agree with everything that's been said. I love there's always that joke about Pixar of like, what if toys had feelings? What if
Yes,
monsters
yes.
had feelings?
Mhm.
What if feelings
had feelings? Yeah, and now it's what if souls? And then their next one is that movie. I think it's going to be called Luca. And somebody was like, what if Italians had feelings?
Because everyone knows Italians don't have feelings.
Yeah, and even Coco. What if Mexicans had feelings?
Fatal.
But
Fatal.
yeah, it was this one is just so touching. I mean, movies that are about creativity and purpose, I think, especially given the year that we've had and how unmotivated you can feel sometimes, just devastate me. Like it hit me in all the right places. I cannot imagine watching like this, Up, Wally, and Inside Out like in the same. Like that's how you destroy a man. That's how you kill someone.
Inside Out. Oof.
That is how.
I'll just be crying constantly.
I remember. I went on. I don't know if it was like I had started dating this one girl once, and it was like around the time Inside Out came out, and she was like, "Oh, let's go to the movies." And I'm like, "Oh, well, the new Pixar film's out. Let's go watch Inside Out." And we were watching. It was the Bing Bong scene. Oh man, when he lets go of her, and like, it's starting to know this person. And I'm like, my eyes just start
I'm not crying.
rolling up. And
I'm
like,
not crying.
oh, gotta keep it together, buddy. Gotta keep it together.
Oh man,
You're not ready to let her see that side of you yet.
That was the perfect time to just let go.
With Bing Bong, I didn't.
But
it was. I mean, clearly I was right too, because she ain't around no more. So
there you go.
You didn't cry at the Bing Bong, man. And that's when you knew. That's when you knew she wasn't the one.
Except she didn't actually. She didn't.
She didn't.
You're absolutely right. I don't even remember who it was. Now I gotta go through the memory banks to see. Anyway,
I'm pretty sure Up makes me cry the most.
Oh, those first 15
I'll pass the
minutes.
record. It's like in 7 minutes, it will make you cry.
Yeah, just at the beginning, it's like, why am I sobbing so hard? This movie just started.
It's like
ugly crying, like ugly crying.
It's so emotionally like breaking, and I think that Up and Wally are sort of like the inverse, where Up is, it uses the music and the whole montage at the beginning to like really go for like Mo was saying, the record time of destroying somebody. But then Wally is so stretched at how it does it, where like just the guts on them to do a half hour of silence at the beginning. In a children's movie.
Well done.
And it's so well done, and you are in love with
I'm getting
characters.
Goosebumps thinking about it.
Like
you are completely entrapped by it from the beginning, and there's no words spoken at all.
Yeah, it's nuts. Pixar, like they used to be untouchable. Ever since then, they've had a couple misfire. Good Dinosaur, Cars.
I haven't seen Dinosaur.
And 2 and 3.
Planes.
Yeah, that weird
That was
planes
Planes.
thing.
Planes is like a spin-off of
It was
Cars.
like kind of a spin-off,
Yeah.
kind of, it was like kind of Pixar, but kind of Disney Studios, Disney Toon Studios. But yeah, it was just it felt weird for a little bit there, you know, Finding Dory, but then we
didn't know if they were going to come back full force, but
they just completely, I mean, between this and Coco and I thought
Coco.
Onward made me
Onward
cry
was
at the
great.
end.
Yeah.
Onward's good. I didn't love it as much as obviously Soul,
Right.
and Inside Out, but it had its good moments.
Yeah.
But it was good because there's so much nerd in Onward.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a nerdy
fantastic.
movie. Like,
Yeah.
That's
it's
the worst the worst of the Chris's, but that's okay. Still a good Pixar.
But sometimes
Sorry.
you get a good Chris, like Chris Pine, and it doesn't
In a
work.
bad. Sometimes it's
the Chris spectrum.
inversely proportional. To the power of the Chris.
Yeah, but Coco makes me ugly cry too.
Oh my God,
Definitely,
that's when the grandma and she's,
yeah.
Yep.
don't get me started. I went to visit my grandma's yesterday, so don't even get me started. But switching gears from Pixar to our beloved franchise that is Star Wars. Mando has wrapped up season 2. We were going to do originally an episode where we were going to do like a final discussion on on season 2 and our thoughts versus season 1 and how the season progressed and our overall thoughts on what had happened. But since we had, as Nani was mentioning before, we had technical difficulties. We did not get to it last week, so we figured this would be a perfect time to do it. Alden had a fantastic thread on Twitter talking about that surprise Luke Skywalker reveal there at the end of episode 8, which had some very good reaction from the fan base, especially from one of our favorite directors, whom we'll talk hopefully about later in this episode, Mr. Rian Johnson. So congratulations, Alden, there. That was
it was a lot of fun.
Pretty cool.
And it was very insightful too. I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Some good words.
Yeah.
Lots of good conversations.
And I'm pretty sure you had talked about it when we were thinking about what might be the end. You talked about you wanting it to be Luke.
I think, I remember saying, like, I think my general feeling going in was sort of like, I don't think they'll do it. Yeah. But it makes a lot of sense.
And I hope,
Yeah. And then, I mean, we'll talk about it, but when the X-Wing showed up, I was like, there's no way.
It can't be anyone else.
There's no way in hell that this is about to happen before my eyes. And then it did.
Yeah. Me and Husbando were literally screaming at the television. Like, it's the X-Wing. It has to be him. Wait, doesn't necessarily have to be him yet. But the framing of it was just so fantastic. And goosebumps all over again, just thinking about it.
I'm still grappling with how I feel about it, that's for sure.
I mean, I think the only problem that I have with it is that at the end of the day, it's the Mandalorian season finale, and all we're talking about is Luke Skywalker. So it kind of maybe takes a little bit away from Mando, but I don't know.
From Grogu.
So yeah,
from that amazing moment of when he takes his helmet off in front of Grogu, and
cried.
And he looks so talking about breaking a man's heart right there.
Yes, Luke Skywalker's the villain, and not the Dark.
He was dressed in all black.
Which doesn't. I mean, this is nitpick, obviously, but I was nitpicking a bit because that's what we do, I guess. Like get every little inch and analyze everything about it. Well, after 5 years, I thought like he would like be transitioning from like those dark robes that represented him, the potential of going to the dark side and Return of the Jedi, and be transitioning to like more of the lighter robed mentor garb that we see at least in the Rise of Kylo Ren comics, if I'm not mistaken.
He has like a gray under piece and everything,
but that's a nitpick.
Well, and at the end of the turn, he has the jacket flap open. You see the white and the jacket with. So I was a little bit worried that I was all black. I was like, "What's happened in the last few years that he's still like all black?" But we don't know. But it is something to be explored. So.
And he's still going to the same barber after 5 years. So good for him.
That 1970s or 80s barber, baby.
You always gotta.
That's the stuff.
Once you find that barber that like treats you right,
Gotta
never go
stick
to
with
another
him.
But-
That's why you always end up in Tatooine. The best barbers are in Tatooine. That's where
Yes.
it's at.
Dr. Mandible is probably his barber.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Ooh. That
Good,
would be
that's-
kind of awesome.
That's canon.
You hear that, Lucasfilm? Get on it.
Get on it.
But personally, for season, it was interesting because after I came back here to visit my parents for the holidays, I was talking to my dad, and I had expected that since he has 3 grandkids, I would have expected him to have Disney Plus here at the house, and to have him watch The Mandalorian, since he knows we have this podcast. I would have expected him to keep up to date. Sadly, he didn't. So I found that as a golden opportunity to put my account here and then start watching Mandalorian with him. And as I was going through season 1, I was realizing some of the things about how I felt about season 2, and personally, it's interesting because season 1 is still framed in a similar fashion to season 2, where there's always one character that's introduced per episode that challenges or helps or stops Mando from doing X or Y thing that he needs to do in that episode. Season 2 does that too, but I felt that the way that season 1 was doing it, at least personally for me, was a little more successful in season 2, because those characters that were always introduced in season 1 were in service of Mando, and Mando was always, always the protagonist and was never overshadowed. And I think, I don't know, maybe this is me just expecting something different, but for season 2, I felt that it became more of the cameo show in a way, and that even though I understand the reason that a lot of these characters were brought in, because obviously they do challenge Mando in one way or another, and very clearly and very appropriately so, I still felt that it robbed the show of what it makes it special in a way. I don't know if you guys...
I don't know if I'd say that it robbed it of what it made it special, but they are definitely a different class. They're a different category for sure. I mean, there's a difference between creating Queel and IG and Cardoon and Mayfeld and Xi'an and all of them, versus Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, Ahsoka Tano, and Luke Skywalker and R2D2. So there's a difference there for sure, expectations. But I do think that and again, some of this will be time. Some of it will be how does season 3 take advantage? It's always that build back. People didn't really like chapters 5, 6, from the first one, especially 5 and then 6, with that. But then all of that comes back. Now you watch 5 and that's Boba Fett. That she's coming back.
Yeah.
That it's that the Sand People, that relationship is going to play in later on. So you've seen Pelly again, and that she can be trusted, that she's a friend. So everything elevates everything. But I think that Bo-Katan, they all give him something. Bo-Katan with the revelation about the cult and the helmets and all that, and Ahsoka putting more trust in Grogu to make his own choices. So I think that they are serving a purpose, but it's a fine line, because you could have made up a Jedi and instead of Ahsoka, and just made up a Jedi Knight that could have been defending that city or something. And
it doesn't make sense, because then you keep adding
right
Jedi, which makes the purge kind of irrelevant at that
but
point.
even then, even if it was Cal Kestis or anyone like that, Quinlan Voss, you could have done someone less popular than her, basically. And it would have been cool, but at the same time, then do you get the same oomph of Bo-Katan sent me the pressure? You can't have lines where she's saying I've seen what this does before. So it's a really, really fine line, and I don't think there's a perfect way to go about it. Could you say that Boba overshadowed Din in that episode? You certainly could, but maybe earns
but
that.
I think they did Boba Fett correctly. I mean, not as if there's a wrong or right way to do things, and I'm not one to say which way that is. But in my perspective, I think Boba Fett was brought in very, very well and very, very strongly, because even though he's such a powerful, legacy character, so to speak, like in the rest of the episodes, he's he's a supporting character. He's not there to overshadow Din in any way. So like I was surprisingly very comfortable with Boba's presence, even though I was very worried
It's the most
of
I've
him
ever
being
liked him.
introduced. True.
Most
And
I've
I
ever
have
liked him.
completely come around to the repainted, the
Me
new
too.
look.
Originally I was all about the beat up
Yeah.
old man
The-
fat armor.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
they full on went for the repaint, and I was like, man, looks
Looks
too
good.
clean.
Looks good.
Yeah.
It's all
And for
about
a
the
second, you're
toys.
like, oh, what? The other one's broken. It's awesome. And then you really look at it, and then he
It's
has all
like-
the black underneath, and it's like, yeah, that's.
Oh, the
And then
black with the robe skirt looks
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Oh, it looks amazing. And there's something about him like repurposing it. Like, this is my armor. I'm making it all new again.
Mhm.
yeah.
And embracing it all over again.
And that's
For
such a
whatever
theme.
reason.
Yeah, that's such a theme of the show. It's Din saying to the armorer in chapter 3, the sin, like, my armor's lost its integrity. I have to begin again.
Mhm.
That's the whole show.
Yep.
Is I lost my integrity. I have to begin again. And if it is true that the Ahsoka episode is pre the Rebels epilogue,
Mhm.
which originally I thought
Mm.
it had to be after because she's already on the Thrawn quest. Not
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
If we see her transition in her show into the white robe and put
Mhm.
away the gray and put on the white, like in that Lord of the Rings way, that is also that armor theme again.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of it. I mean, even Cobb Vanth, like if we ever see him again, how did he move?
I'm really
When?
hoping for
When?
Cobb Vanth again.
When?
When we see
In the Boba
When?
show, he has to show up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has to. They have to have a conversation. Like, and also they have to explain why didn't Boba just either challenge him or kill him?
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause
He knew where
him by
his
name.
armor was for years. Yeah,
He
he
knew
knew
him
where it
by
was
name.
and
Yeah.
didn't actually do anything about it until Din took it. So why?
Maybe
Yeah.
he was just looking for the slave one.
Maybe.
Who knows?
You think the slave one would be parked outside the castle? Outside the
Yes,
palace?
good.
True,
You had to have a carjack on it or
after they saw Boba go into the Sarlacc pit, somebody was like,
Oh,
those Jawas were like, let's take that chip. Like
they're
that's
relentless.
ours.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And Mac Daddy Bib Fortuna.
Yeah.
Oof,
Probably
Matthew
had
Wood.
to-
That was fantastic.
Yeah, I loved that whole
it was-
scene.
It was so Return. It
Yeah.
was framed exactly the same. I mean, I remember when I first saw the two songs, I was like, Tatooine again. Not that I don't
Yeah,
love
I'm
Tatooine,
like,
but
stop.
again. And then it's like Jabba's palace. Oh.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, you had my, what is it? You had my curiosity.
Curiosity.
Now you have my attention.
It was the same way where I saw those because I love the art, so I waited
Mhm.
for the art and then it cut to the credits
Black.
over black.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And
Mhm.
I waited to see if it was Mark Hamill, and then it was. And I was like, hey.
Mhm.
And then I got up to put my coffee cup in the sink. And I was
That's what it was.
halfway to the kitchen and I saw like the light change on the TV and I was like,
What?
what? And then I saw the twin sons.
Yeah.
And for a split second, I thought it was going to be Luke and Grogu. I thought that he had
I
taken
thought it was
them,
going to
like,
be two.
to
I
the
thought it was going to be
homestead.
two.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
was like, again with the homestead.
Mhm.
Not that I'll ever be sad about seeing it, but
I know, but still, when you see Jabba's palace,
I was like,
like,
do tell again because Jedi's my favorite, and so that was just such a trip, and just the rock and roll, like it's like sexy and like an album cover when
Yeah.
when Fennec gets up there with the
Yeah.
spotchka and like
yep.
he's sitting
And
with his
the rifle.
like it's just, man, and they're both almost 60 years old.
Yep.
And they look fantastic.
It's crazy.
And
It's
Tem,
insane.
it's good for Tem. I mean, because especially from that gallery documentary, you can tell that he's having the time of his life being back,
Oh yeah.
like in Star Wars.
I
So
love him.
like, it's fantastic.
I'm
It did throw a monkey wrench into like my theories of how Boba Fett was gonna fit into Mandalorian
Mando
in terms
story,
of, like
yeah.
the hero's journey and like, but we'll see. Especially now that we know that Robert Rodriguez is he's the showrunner or the
He's
writer.
he's one of the executive producers. Yeah.
executive.
So
producer.
probably show running, maybe doing the pilot or a couple more or something.
Mm.
Oh, for the Book of Boba?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's, I mean, and just seeing in the gallery, I mean, that, which all, also came out
Mhm.
at the time of this recording a couple days ago. So I want to watch it again. But the fact that Robert shot with his sons in the backyard, the way that he wanted to frame his fight scene is so good. I loved that.
And it ended up being the same thing. Was the surprising thing for me,
Yeah.
basically. Like it was shot for shot the same thing he envisioned with his kids. I was like, holy crap! That's
And he said it was a
solid vision.
a 3-page fight scene, and he turned it into a 10-minute fight scene.
Hey, the man knows what he's doing with action scenes.
It's so good.
Definitely.
It's
So,
phenomenal. I'm excited for all that.
I know. It's definitely a ride. And I think that, like you were saying, Alden, we're going to be able to tell with time, the difference between the seasons and everything. But I think it was too good of an opportunity to pass up to do more storytelling, because I don't think anybody had any idea how successful The Mandalorian was going to be when season 1 came out. So running from all of that success to season 2, you have this chance to open it up for more content for people that are not that immersed in Star Wars. So you get Bo-Katan, you get Ahsoka Tano, you get Boba Fett, you get people wanting to watch, Clone Wars and Rebels and everything. Right. So it is that opportunity to open it up. And I think, maybe he was a little bit overshadowed this season, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I think that it always does a good job of exactly at the end. It does a good job of snapping back. Like it always expands everything out. Like Luke shows up and he has this incredible sequence and then this incredible dialogue. And then when he picks up Grogu, when they're walking down the hallway together, the camera's on Grogu. It's not about Luke anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that they always remind you of what it is really about. Like Ahsoka showing up and then making it about them and their family and then walking away. Bo-Katan saying, once you finish your mission, you should consider joining us. But he's still our point of view. And now accidentally being possibly
the leader of Mandalore
ruler.
Oh my God.
I love this man.
I wonder how they're gonna play that one.
Which is interesting because I saw someone ask. Yeah, I saw someone saying like, "Oh, if there's gonna be a time jump between season 2 and season 3," I'm like, "There can't be a time jump. We have to see what happens immediately." This is kind of like a Force Awakens Last Jedi situation. You can't leave a cliffhanger like that.
It was too much of a cliffhanger.
See what happens immediately.
Yeah, I agree. And there's also so much unresolved. Like even Darksaber aside, Gideon is alive.
Yes.
And he's right there, and he confirmed that he got the blood of Grogu to continue his plot. That is all still happening. They're gonna have to call up Carson Teva and get these Rangers of the New Republic, whoever they're gonna be, on this immediately, because some stuff's going down.
It'll be more
some
of
detective work.
Exactly. Okay. Right. I'll prefer that because like Rangers of the New Republic is one of the ones that I'm least excited for.
Yeah.
But if it's more of a a mystery crime detective thing instead of straight on cops,
exactly,
figuring out like a mystery and like trying to solve it, I'll be more invested, especially if like Gina Carano isn't involved. I hope that, and if she is, like just keep her at a minimum.
Whatever you were gonna give Cara Dune. Lucasfilm, I know you watch this show, so
they do.
Of course, yes.
I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna give it to you right into the camera. Whatever you're gonna give Cara Dune, you give to Iden Versio instead, and you bring in Janina, who already acts in live action and is with the New Republic at this time in the timeline.
And she'd do it.
Oh, in a heartbeat, she would do it. That's what you do.
I like that.
I'm loving this. Yes.
Alden has spoken.
And Lucasfilm will do it now because they listen.
Yeah.
I have spoken. Goodbye.
And resurrect Quill.
But I think after
that makes me cry too. Yep.
Like after hearing like everything, I feel like maybe what retracted a little bit from the story was that it was a little bit more just like, as Alden said, expanding to give us like all those like new stories that are coming down the road. And it's possible that, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, they started shooting season 2 before even knowing the success of season 1. So it's possible they were just, this was always the plan, like hook us in, then they throw up a bunch of like fish lines and nets, and we start like.
I mean, it's Favreau. He built the MCU.
Yeah.
So,
So
I mean,
so it's but it's kind of like I agree with a little bit with a little what everybody said.
Mhm.
That
Better, goddammit.
Who do you agree with the most?
who do I agree with the most?
Tear you guys
I-
apart before I
Directo al
leave.
grano
It's
este.
like, yeah.
More.
I think it would be Nani.
Choose wisely.
Oh, that's fair.
You
That's
have
fair.
chosen poorly. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? Come on, guys. Come on.
That's all. It's all
Uh,
Lucasfilm. It's all Lucasfilm, baby.
but that's the beauty of like we also have to like consider like who's the real audience for the show. Is it
Mhm.
like the diehard fans? Is it everybody that's like getting into Disney Plus? So in a way,
It's like that taco commercial. Why not both?
Yeah.
I think it's
exactly. So
everybody.
so it's I give kudos to them for in every episode I think like either being a diehard fan or somebody that doesn't know anything about Star Wars,
Right.
anybody that sits down and watches it will enjoy it in some
Mhm.
level. Or maybe they'll just hate it, but they'll have a good time hating it.
No, but at the end of
The
the
only-
day, I mean, they'll miss some like Easter eggs and stuff, but you can follow the story without
Exactly.
knowing that much of a about Star Wars. Because my mother and father-in-law, who don't even remember watching the originals, they say they did maybe back in the day, but they don't really remember them, and they're huge fans of Mandalorian.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
and
think
to
that,
be
yeah.
frank, the only people that hate Star Wars are Star Wars fans.
That's true.
So,
I
Sure.
also think that like
True.
we also have to remember that to that point about Star Wars fans, we get probably more distracted and thrown off than the casual viewer because we see Bo-Katan and we're like, Bo-Katan and this that about Death Watch and Clone Wars and all this stuff, and we start making all these connections and
Yeah.
Bo-Katan and Luke Skywalker are in the same room, and how Bo-Katan can say like, hey, your master used to sleep with my sister, like all these connections that we can make. A casual viewer
Yeah.
is just meeting her for the first time and the
Just
area.
go with the flow.
Awesome. She's like a badass. That's
she's
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
She's a
Cool
leader.
helmet.
of the whole
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Oh, she takes her helmet off. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's all they know.
I thought
Someday.
Mandalorians couldn't take their helmet off.
Exactly.
So what's happening?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they see Ahsoka and they're like, oh, she's a Jedi from when the little baby was like even smaller. Cool.
Even a smaller baby.
Yeah, like those are the only one that that really throws it for a loop in a mainstream pop culture way is Luke, but he's the main character of Star Wars,
Yes.
for 40 years. So it does sort of like if you're gonna throw the dice on anyone,
Yeah.
it's Luke, Han, and Leia,
Yeah.
and they're all
Yeah.
safe bets.
It's interesting though because I've asked a couple of friends of mine that aren't active fans, so they just watch the movies, right? So
Right.
They don't know the deep lore, and I always make a point to ask them while they're watching Mandalorian. It's like, oh, well, has it thrown you off this season to see like all these characters that come in, and most, if not all of them, have like resoundingly said that it has not distracted them, and they don't really wonder who these people are. So it kind of confirms that the show is doing this in an appropriate way, where like they bring in characters that are appropriate for the story and written correctly for new viewers that don't know who they are to accept them in the story
Right.
and know what they need to know.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like with Boba is the other big one where
Yeah.
showing him at the end of chapter 9 starts the season off for us with that lingering like, oh, when are they going to pay off
What?
Boba?
Yeah.
For other
Are they
people,
actually going to use him? What?
right? Is this
Yeah.
going to be next season?
Mhm.
For other people, when he shows up in the tragedy,
Mhm.
they're probably like, oh, it's from the first
What is
episode.
that guy
Oh,
from
cool.
episode
Yeah.
1 of season
Oh, he
2?
found him. Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
I know.
Bro, what a badass is like.
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
out and
Oh,
destroys
this
the
old.
whole
He's an
platoon.
old Mandalorian. So we have the main Mandalorian, we have the girl Mandalorian, and we have the old Mandalorian. Cool. Like
This is the Mandalorian family.
the redhead and now the Polynesian old startup guy.
with the stick and a rifle.
Oh.
That's
Oh.
all you need. That's all you need.
Singing
Singing the
Mandalorian.
Mandalorian blues in the gallery.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah. So now I really feel that we are just whining because we know that these characters are in the overall universe more important than Mando. So we think they overshadow him. But at the end of the day, for people that don't know who these characters are, Mando is not being overshadowed.
Oh, I haven't asked them that, so you could possibly be correct, but I have yet to do a scientific.
To ask
study.
that specific question.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's a great because
And my sample
just-
sample size is 2, so not
Hey.
as
Your
thorough.
sample
that's
No,
all
because
you
I
need.
mean, I assume they're being kind of overpowered just because the character is overpowering to begin with. Because
Yeah,
we know so much about these characters already.
right.
So
And also, I think that for the casual viewer,
Mhm.
wherever Grogu is where their attention is.
oh,
True,
definitely.
true.
Yeah.
Wish
Fact.
it's new speculation time. Will we see Grogu in season 3, or will Grogu be woven back into the story at some undetermined point in the future? Because he has to come back. I mean, their story. Their
I think
stories
that-
are, you know.
I think that he's not going to be in Book of Boba Fett at all.
Mhm.
That's pretty safe bet,
Yeah,
I'd
no,
say.
I don't think so.
I think that he might be in Mandalorian, like in the second half of season 3. Like I'd say do like Gideon, Bo, Darksaber up top. And then maybe the back half brings Grogu back in. And then you follow that with Ahsoka. Like, so do like some Mando war stuff and then really start to transition into like the really Force-y stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think that I don't want to see Luke more than once again. Like Luke should be like seasoning, like
Yeah.
a little,
Sprinkle.
if that. You know, I'd even be okay with seeing Luke's like legs and boots as Grogu walks by.
Yeah.
Like I really don't need a lot of him.
Just him showing up in his X-wing and throwing Grogu out of the cockpit.
Yeah, like he drops an escape pod as he goes by.
I'm giving him back.
Yeah, he eats
I-
too much.
Yeah, he.
I well, it
I was
doesn't.
gonna
It,
say
would-
that Trump.
I can't feed him.
I can't feed him yet. Like
Eats all of Ben's treats. I can't.
like it wouldn't make sense for them to drop Grogu. It's too much of a marketing.
Exactly.
and,
It's
like,
too
Although,
much
money
although if they do drop them, I think it's ballsy, and I would support it because it's kind of the same strategy they did for Rogue One, which I think worked out beautifully in terms of the overall product, right, of the storytelling, which is just kill off all your characters.
yes,
You have an
but-
impactful.
But we already knew that those characters had to die in
Yeah.
a sense.
Yeah,
Because then it wouldn't fit within any hope.
it's
Like
true. Yeah, it's a
Uh,
little bit different in that way. I agree, but in terms of like making people fall in love with them, like on like that marketing level, I do get. I think it would be interesting. I don't really want selfishly as a fan of Grogu, I don't want this because I want to see him soon. But I think that creatively, keep him off the table
For a
for season
while.
3
Mhm.
altogether, and then in the Ahsoka show, that's when you do Luke, Ahsoka, Grogu around a campfire in some way, or around a dinner table. I think that this child could be what gets them to speak, and Ahsoka and Luke talking. I think because I don't think that she knows that Anakin came back,
Mhm.
and I think that that should be the huge moment of her series.
So are we gonna hedge bets and say that there's going to be a meetup between Luke and Ahsoka in the Ahsoka show?
I think so. I think that a conversation between Luke and Ahsoka happening and being what pushes her from the gray cloak to the white cloak could be
Wow.
super cool. Just like in the sense of she's had this gray cloak and this and that mentality since the Clone Wars. You know, the Clone Wars ends with the shot of the gray and all the helmets. And then when chapter 13 starts, it's the gray and she's got, you know, the blades out, taking out those troopers. What takes her from those blades to this Gandalf looking staff and this focus and just like having been gone for the whole original trilogy era? Like what made her have that sort of like master feeling? And I think that thinking that Anakin was really gone might be what kept her sad or like torn in a certain way.
Mhm.
And maybe she'll finally find peace if he they should never let me direct one of these because people want to complain about fan service now. I'll give you fan service.
I'll give
I
you
would
all the
have-
friends.
I would have Luke and Ahsoka talking, and then halfway through the conversation, Luke goes, there's someone better than me that can explain what happened, and then it's Anakin.
Force Ghost. Boom.
Because
Force Ghost
Hayden's back in the
Yep.
family acting
Could you
again.
imagine?
Have you had
I mean-
Force Ghost
Oh,
Hayden talking to Ahsoka?
That would be. I think
actually
the nerdgasm would be too powerful. I think
It would be
the.
too powerful.
I think this
Yeah.
the world is not ready for a
I would weep.
nerdgasm of that magnitude.
I will take that whole Luke story, but change it with Anakin, and then it's like, boom.
Yeah, I
Like,
would.
that will be
I would be inconsolable.
yeah.
Well, and you got
Especially
Ewan,
because
but you're
Anakin
right.
probably
like,
knew
it's-
Grogu.
like we can only see Luke like once, or maybe like just like. But I can see Grogu and R2 popping up.
Yeah,
Like randomly kind of running around and
like kind of like maybe halfway they'll do like a Lord of the Rings thing, and like 10 minutes will be like, oh, it's Grogu like playing with R2 or something, just so we like
Like a
check in.
I don't know
Some
if he's
date.
still around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or even if it's like, because my whole thing has been Luke Skywalker's life at this point. There's going to be other threats. We know that, like, because of Rise of Skywalker, him and Lando, when they were younger, went after Ochi of Bastoon. So it's like, what if one day Din is in his new ship, whatever ship that is? I don't know if he gets another one or wherever he's living, let's say. And let's say Chewbacca shows up holding Grogu. And he's like, what is this? And Chewbacca basically says, like, I'm here on behalf of Luke Skywalker. You know, there's dark forces or something is happening.
Yeah.
And
So I need to give him back.
the child needed to be safe, and he knew that you'd watch over him again. Something like that could be a cute
Something
way to
like
get
that.
like one more cameo in there. I don't think they'll do Han, because I think that if they do that again, it might be in the Lando show. Like, I think they'll save Alden Han for young projects.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll do Leia, just because that's probably the hardest of all the recasts.
I know.
So I think that Chewie is easy because he can exist as just Chewie in all time periods, and it always works.
Yeah.
Somebody like that, showing up and just being like, we know that the child loves you. He'll be safe here. There's bigger things going on that you don't know about. Maybe that's Thrawn, or something like that. And
I'm a little. I keep mentioning this every time Thrawn is brought up, because I'm a Thrawn advocate, especially like with the news Timothy Zahn books, especially with Chaos Rising in particular. Like I don't see Thrawn anymore as like a straightforward villain.
Yeah.
Like he might have been in the original Thrawn trilogy, which is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but like now I feel like he's working for the Empire because he has ulterior motives to help the Shiz in the unknown regions from threats that the Empire could help with.
Right.
So like I don't see him as being like some like a Moff Gideon or a Krennic or one of these like loyalists to the Empire. I personally feel that with the fall of the Empire, he would be like, well, this is not in my best interest anymore to serve, because they've fallen, so they can't help the Shiz ascendancy.
Right.
And so to keep him as a villain, I'm not so sure that that's the right way to go, just because that's not how he's being framed anymore, even though they can do whatever they want in live action, because live action trumps the books, right? But if they bring him in, I think it's gonna has to be a little more nuanced than just straight up villain. He can't be Moff Gideon.
No. And I don't think those two guys would get along.
No.
I think it'll be like a 3-faction type thing. Like maybe
Like everybody like fighting over the scraps of what the
Something.
Empire used to be,
That-
like trying to
maybe-
establish
maybe-
something.
Maybe it's Thrawn the one that like facilitates or like is the main catalyst for like the First Order to pop up.
Oh, see,
I
I was
just
gonna go the reverse and say
Yeah,
that.
I would say the reverse
you
for
want
that.
that-
Yeah,
actually.
that if Gideon is like,
Mhm.
I can use the blood and get it to Exegol, and like he knows about the plan or something. Like Gideon might be the one they left behind to get the resources or something. And Thrawn would I think that Thrawn would be the one that's like, look, you hate me, but you have no idea that Palpatine, that he lingers, that he's not entirely gone, and that if he is planning, Thrawn could be playing like the New Republic versus Imperial Remnant versus Rising First Order versus everything, and looking at the entire board and trying to decide, like Luke Skywalker, and because you
Right.
got to keep in mind, like Thrawn's in canon, his biggest defeat was because he didn't really understand the Force, and you got to imagine that with Luke Skywalker being out there and Ahsoka too, that he's probably done a fair bit of studying since
Yeah.
then.
Oh, I mean, because he's with Ezra, so in my mind, he and Ezra are buddies now.
Yeah.
They're besties. So it can't. It's either Ezra went to the dark side or Thrawn's now, in Ezra's good graces. But they can't. It's like the Harry Potter prophecy. None can survive while the other exists, or whatever the prophecy said. Some shit.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
I don't know. Whichever. I don't know. I haven't seen Order of the Phoenix in a while.
Did you
That's my
read the
least
books?
favorite.
You didn't read the books, did you?
Yes, I obviously read the books. I have them upstairs. But
Yeah, like neither can live while the other survives. Or...
something like that.
Something
I
like
don't know.
that.
I love the book, but the movie just fucking broke my heart. I don't know. Like that and Goblet of Fire, it just broke my soul. Because the book.
Gary
was so
Oldman.
good.
Gary Oldman.
Gary
He's
Oldman's
the-
amazing.
He's the bright light in those movies. But,
No, Alan Rickman. Sorry.
But he's been in all the movies, so
Yes.
Gary Oldman. It still hurts that.
It hurts. Anyway, we're getting distracted. as we do as nerds. We
Yes.
just get distracted. It's what happens. So anyway, there's many theories about what's going to happen, obviously, but I think it's up to the directors to decide what theme they're going to follow. So I think
I was disappointed George Lucas didn't direct the last episode.
Uh,
I was like, oh man, it's gonna be him.
That was just the last thing. I couldn't-
Yeah, I was
I
I knew I shouldn't have been sure about it, but I convinced myself. I was like, it has to be. It was good.
I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad.
The possibility of them double dipping a director, and that's why they didn't announce all 8, did not occur to me, and that was a mistake, a rookie mistake.
Yeah, I was like it got out the day before that it was Peyton, and I was like, I'm happy for Peyton because I like him, but
Yeah.
I was like, man,
But
I thought
still
it was
a little
gonna
bit-
be surprise. But yeah, I mean, he rocked it, and ultimately, like you're saying, like all the Star Wars directors, they all get Star Wars, but they are all so different in a lot of ways.
they all interpret Star Wars in a different way, as we all do, obviously. So I think we should get into this now, like talking about the directors and how they have differently handled Star Wars. Do you guys want to talk about films first? Do you want to stick with Mando? What do you guys want to do?
I think films are kind of I personally feel they should be the first thing, yes, because it's the original live action, directorial
That's how it
effort
started.
of people.
So then we have to start with George Lucas.
The man himself,
Yep.
the creator,
The man,
legend.
the myth, the legend.
Dad,
Dad.
Dad,
pops.
old plaid man.
George Lucas, who changed our lives.
He is a humble guy. I will give him that.
Love him so much.
I think he's a fantastic director, but I feel he works better when he's surrounded by a team that can challenge him and
Yes.
say no to him and stand up to him.
Mhm.
And that's why I feel, in a nutshell, this I'm not going to go so hardcore into it right now. That's why I feel like the prequels failed directorially, where like he shined more in A New Hope, because A New Hope he had Gary Kurtz, he had his wife at the time, he had like all these people that like, and he was insecure also and had no money. So like he had like all these circumstances around him.
Not
that
everybody
kinda-
saying yes to him.
Exactly. That kind of like forced him to make a better, and I use better cautiously, product than like the prequels. Is even though I found a lot of value in the prequel now, after letting them sit in consciousness for like over 10 years, well 20 with the Phantom Menace, that they've been in pop culture now. I feel like if he had like his Gary Kurtz, that would stand up to him to kind of challenge some of his decision making, I think his directorial efforts would have been considerably more successful. But I mean, he's the creator, though. He made the world as we know it in his image.
Yeah, in his image. We are all George in a certain way.
We're all George's children.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, George is George is a phenomenal storyteller.
Yes.
He's not a writer, and
Yeah.
he says that himself. And
Yeah.
he
Storyteller, world builder.
Yeah, world builder. He's a visionary. He is, it's so funny nowadays that people say like, "Oh, Star Wars has too much nostalgia." Star Wars is a nostalgia trip. The original one is a nostalgia trip for the Searchers, for Flash Gordon, for the Bridge on the River Kwai, for Yojimbo, for Seven Samurai, for all of these things. King Arthur, yes,
Yeah.
and even like a little bit of like, there's a connection between Luke Skywalker and like Peter Parker. Those early Stan Lee, Marvel comics. George loved Marvel
Coming of
comics
age
and
stories.
exactly Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
I mean, it's all of those things, and George is the ultimate like remix artist. Like he's the ultimate person that's like, I can take something and make it fresh again and show it to you in a way that you've never experienced it before. And he doesn't get enough
combined
credit.
them into ways that worked, like combining all those. Yeah.
Yes, being able to create, like he's like a DJ, and just the way that he doesn't get enough credit because it's become like a joke, like faster, more intense.
Yeah.
Like like that
poetry.
might have been.
It rhymes.
Yeah, those might be like his two big things, but
and the other criticize that it's like he stole from this, he stole from this, he stole from this. Yes.
Yeah.
But everybody steals from something. What fantasy anything hasn't stolen from Tolkien?
It's all exactly.
I mean,
they're all the same stories. I mean, Harry Potter, Aslan, Anakin Skywalker, they're all Jesus Christ. All of them come down to the
Neo from the Matrix.
Story of Christ. Neo, it's all the cave and these existential writings. And so it's like what he did though, and with like Marshall Lucas and Gary Kurtz, is he found the speed and the pacing and the wipe transitions and the lingering on creatures and establishing things a certain way. Like all of that flavor in New Hope is so masterfully done.
Yeah.
And so like meticulous, and the way that he had an eye for talent, like to pick Mark and Carrie and Harrison and Billy D and Peter Mayhew and just all these people like
that were completely unknown back then.
How do you get the perfect mix like that? Like that's talent. And yeah, George rocks. George is great, and he was always thinking ahead. Like George
He was thinking about the volume.
He wanted to build a volume, a decade ago. Like he wanted everything was all, he was cursed with being a visionary ahead of his time.
Yeah.
I wonder though,
isn't that the beauty of like why we end up loving George? Like, because it pushes that boundary between what our daily lives just is and what it could possibly mean if we for a split second just teleport ourselves into that reality. Like we can all be Leia, we can all be Luke from our specific points of views. And I think that's the beauty of George. Like he gave us that raw myth as well. Like the story became a living thing, which is what you will expect from any good narrative.
Yeah.
It becomes its own thing. You're the creator, which like I think a lot of things still like don't get there, where the creator still wants to control and like dictate. But to get to the point of like, this becomes like, I think like George understood that once art or something's put out there, you are the owner. Whoever's watching it makes it a reality. And I think that's what separates George from, at least in my view. But I'm just making shit up here. So
no, I mean I agree. I agree, but I extended a little beyond that because I see it similarly to you, Mo. But for me, one of the things that makes Star Wars special through your George is that he was able to, imbue meaning, because he could have done any sci-fi film. I mean, you compare some of the sci-fi films that came after that, that were knockoffs of Star Wars, like Disney's The Black Hole, and like all these contemporary movies at the time. They were trying to do sci-fi, but they didn't understand the meaning that George was imbuing it. And I think that's one of the things that we see, especially and we'll discuss it when we talk about some of these other directors, when we see the approaches that some of the directors in Star Wars have had, some don't understand that meaning behind the things that they're putting onto film.
Because
And
Star Wars isn't sci-fi. Star Wars is fantasy.
Exactly.
It's fantasy. Yeah, Star Wars
It's fantasy in space.
A parable.
Fantasy space.
It's the whole idea. George always says it like, these are stories for 12-year-olds. Like that's the whole thing. Like it's all about those choices. Like Star Wars is not about the space opera. It is a space opera, but it's not about a space opera. It's about going to college. It's about dating the boy from the wrong side of the tracks. It's about the pressures of growing up. It's about family drama at home. For Han Solo is just a boy and his dog, except for, I would argue that Han is the dog. And because Chewie, I think Chewie is the more mature of the two.
That's why he doesn't interject so much. Like,
exactly.
He kind of just lets him be. It's like, I know better, but
you let your pop do its stuff,
Exactly.
If it barks, it barks. You love it.
Let him hang out. You still love him. If he pees, that's what Star Wars is, and with Padme and Anakin, that's the star-crossed lovers. It's always been there. Rey is so much of the stuff that we see throughout all of fiction of like the girl with the untapped power, like there's a reason why Rey and Eleven from Stranger Things took off at the same time, because those are both like, that's, and even in the horror version, is like Carrie, like what happens when a society oppresses, that the women and things like that. So there's so much going on. I mean, throughout, and that's all because of George. Because George is like, he's an anthropologist who just like happened to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, which is interesting that you brought up that whole point about Rey, and I want to see your thoughts real quick about that. I don't know if you saw like the article. I don't know if it was from today or yesterday from the Alan Dean Foster interview.
I don't care what Alan Dean Foster thinks.
This whole interview where he was like bashing on The Last Jedi. But
he's wrong.
He did mention something. He did, obviously, but he did mention this one thing that kind of ties in the opposite direction, right? To what you were saying about the untapped potential of Rey and like these female characters from other media. And he was saying that in his pitch for Episode 9, Rey would have like these cybernetics or robotic parts that then would justify why she's suddenly so strong, because the robot parts enabled her to learn more and then become more powerful. And it's just like, wait, when I was reading that, it's just like, why do we have to do that to female characters? Why do we have to justify their power and give some external thing or person the ability to unlock that power within them, and they can't just innately have it when men are never justified in their powerfulness?
Yeah. No. That's my thought. Is a huge
no to all that.
No. Not only is that way too sci-fi for this, on the base level, it's also, it just reeks of an old man sensibility. It's such an old antiquated man talking out of his rear, and to his credit,
you're trying to be polite.
Yeah, to his credit, George. Even as a young man and as an old man, really understood, I think, how to flesh out a character like that. Like with Leia, like she was, I mean, his contribution in that way to a step forward in media can never be overstated. Like George and Carrie as a team changed it all. Like everything. There is no Ripley. There's no Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Without Leia.
Captain Marvel. There's Wonder Woman. I mean, Wonder Woman existed first in comics, but on screen.
But Wonder Woman was kind of a sadism, masochism kind of thing. The guy who wrote
there's
that.
a little bit of that we had to refine that out over time and to get rid of some of those elements and make them more palatable. But George had it. I mean, like Padme.
Originally, he wanted Luke to be a female character too, if I'm not mistaken.
And Luke was a woman at one point in the development. You know, you can get artwork, you know, the Ralph McQuarrie art of Luke, girl Luke.
Yeah, and for the sequel trilogies, he wanted to make Leia the chosen
the
one.
master, and yeah, and Dave Filoni was saying that as well, and in some of those creative meetings, and we know that you know, people love to be like, in George's 7, 8, and 9, that would have been, you still would have had a girl Jedi. That was always the plan.
And Luke still died.
Whether it was Kira, whether it was Winky.
Yeah,
you know,
there was always going to be a female Jedi.
Shakira the Jedi.
Yeah.
No, Winky. I prefer Winky.
Winky Skywalker, man.
No, but there's something so incredibly powerful about Leia, because you still frame her as very feminine and a princess.
Right.
But she was, as soon as those boys showed up, Luke and Han, she took over that situation. He's like, you came to rescue me. I think I have to rescue you guys, because you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
You open the cell door, I will actually rescue you.
That's why I love
like,
the
you came here in that.
Jedi,
yeah.
Leia from Last Jedi, excuse me, because, you know, she's, as opposed to like in The Force Awakens, where she's wearing like these, you know, more rugged general clothes, which I get, but like then Last Jedi, she's back to her regalia, right? She's
the regalia. It's like,
but who can still grab a blaster whenever time calls for it, and you know,
a balance, you know, and
I can be royal, I can be feminine, and I can still kick your ass.
And what I love about her with there, you know, tying in with what you were just saying about when these boys come to rescue her, is that now that she has, you know, she has her biological son that is on his own path, but then like her adoptive son and Poe, the way that she mentors Poe is handling another one of those boys, but now as an older woman. Like he has that same like Han swagger. You know, exactly. Like I can just kick its ass, and like that'll be my solution to every problem.
Like, dude, no.
She's rearing him in the same way of, you know, Finn and Poe both learn the Han Solo lesson in Last Jedi. They just learn the two halves of it. You know, Finn has to learn about commitment to a cause and not just to people, and then Poe has to learn that it's not about heroics.
Which frames into what we were discussing about how directors imbue meaning into films. And I think that while I love The Force Awakens, I think it's a fantastic film. JJ, personally, I feel like, I don't remember who said this quote, and I'm not going to quote it exactly. But when this person I was reading an article from, they were discussing JJ's and Ryan's approach to Star Wars. And basically, in a nutshell, it was saying like JJ likes Star Wars, and you can see that, but Ryan understands Star Wars, and you can see that. So there's like a veneer in each of the movies that you can kind of understand the perception through which those directors are looking at the film from. And for me, like JJ's Force Awakens, which again, fantastic. I love it. I think it's amazing, but it's more of the, what do I want to see from a Star Wars movie? Versus Ryan being like, what does the movie need to be?
Yeah, it's definitely you know, two halves of the same coin, because what I think that JJ, and I, you know, obviously people that are listening are like, you skipped over Irving Kershner and Richard Marquand, and it's like, we did and we didn't. I mean, those are still George movies. He's admitted that he micromanaged them. Real quick note. He basically directed Jedi. No disrespect to Richard Marquand. We love him, and he did some great stuff. Rest in peace. And rest in peace, Irving Kershner, who brought, you know, romance and the heart and like
and improvisation
and improv and those touches. So you know, those under the envelope of that original trilogy for sure. But in terms of JJ, the biggest compliment that I can give him is that JJ Abrams, more so than probably anybody, can look at a thing and tell you why culturally we love that thing. Like he was able to find like the heart of like Mission Impossible, the heart of Star Trek, the heart of Star Wars, and what those things are in terms of like the dynamics. And he gets like the trappings. Like that's why there's all these rumors that right now he's looking over Superman scripts. He's the perfect person to do Superman. If you can give me a Superman movie that makes me feel the way Force Awakens made me feel, I'm dead.
Makes you love the character all over again from the beginning.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he was originally attached to do a Superman script like either in the late 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah, he wrote one forever ago. It's called like Superman Flyby. and
There's
it's
been a
wacky.
lot of
It's
people
wacky,
attached.
by the way.
I mean, there was a Tim Burton version of like
Kevin
Dark
Smith
Batman.
wrote the
With
script
Nick
for that one.
Cage.
Yeah,
Yeah, with
yeah,
Nick Cage.
Mhm.
Yeah, that whole thing is
Oh,
a
God.
Oh, yeah.
wild journey.
There's
it's a
so much.
fantastic documentary about it.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And I think we actually touched on this a little bit last time, that JJ kind of knows how to start something, but he doesn't know how to finish something.
Yeah, I think because he likes to create. Like he's like a marathon like creator. He'll create and create and create and create and create. And he's a really interesting cat in that way, where there isn't really anyone else like him that is so obsessed with the beginnings, about what grabs somebody. And like I really like his first Star Trek a lot. His second one a little less so. I love Super 8. Force Awakens. I
The first season of Lost.
Yeah, I'll defend Rise of
fantastic.
Skywalker, even though Rise of Skywalker is wonky. I get it. It's super wonky. But thematically, I think that he understands Star Wars as it exists for the world of movie going. It was JJ that was like practical effects, real sets. Like we're gonna get back to
kind of brought it back to the original trilogy of like making it look more real,
right?
Which I think was the problem with George, and obviously George, but I think he was that fantastic not only because of the people he had with him originally. It's because he was a little limited with the technology, so he had to get really creative.
Yeah.
And then when he had the opportunity to do the prequel trilogy, it was like, oh, more technology. Let's rely on that. And he relied on it too much.
Yeah.
And the CGI just does not hold up from the prequel trilogy. It doesn't. And
the fact that he didn't have a screenwriter to help him
yeah,
flesh out some of that dialogue.
Yeah, the dialogue was
so
kind of terrible.
Not even Carrie Fisher, rest in peace.
I know. Could have saved that. I know.
I mean, she did. She did doctor some of the scripts, I think, for Attack of the Clones.
But it was still the dialogue was.
But whoa. Yeah.
Which is probably like what JJ. It's a little bit different. JJ sort of understands people. I feel like from the beginning on like TFA, like the Force Awakens, you feel emotion from every character, even from the ones that like Kylo Ren is masked. You still feel that emotion, and I think that's something to give credit to.
Yeah.
Like how can you tell a story from the person's perspective, and which is what, at least from my perspective, why people start loving Rey all of a sudden, start loving Kylo and Ben and Finn to the same level that we love the sequel. I mean the original trilogy and the prequel. Like we hold them on the same standards,
right?
Because I feel that somehow right from that beginning, JJ was able to grasp that human feeling that made us connect with them on that level.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that you're talking about you grasping those feelings. First of all, just like masterful casting, and just like his ability to pick out new talent is nuts. It's up there with George. Like to go up there and say, I'm gonna knock it out of the park. Yeah, like some known faces, sure, but like to knock it out of the park in creating Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren, and BB-8, and that's just the core 5.
Yeah,
and we all love them. Like
to do that, I mean, we loved Kylo Ren and BB-8 before the movie came out because they were everywhere, and that was a cultural like event. JJ understands Star Wars on the level of what is the myth that Star Wars is going to. Like the King Arthur, like the Lost Youth, and all of these things, the Dark Prince and like King Arthur's nephew becoming, all of that with Kylo Ren and all that. Ryan understands Star Wars on the level of Star Wars is the myth that Star Wars is going back to. And I think, because there's an episode 8 that I think is much easier, which is, I've been out here searching for a way to come back, Rey, and then Rey gets him back in the game, and then they're training master apprentice. Like he could have done, Ryan could have done that stuff, but Ryan is saying, yes, Star Wars is all of this, and now we have it back. but now it has to face itself. You know, JJ is
continuing the cycle,
again.
kind of like doing the cycle again.
JJ's hugging Star Wars again, and Ryan is pushing Star Wars back and making it like look at itself. It's like holding a mirror to Star Wars. You know, they're challenging.
It's that scene with
other.
Rey. It's that whole scene with Rey in the cave.
Yeah,
I think Ryan did that to us as the audience.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and and that's it's the extension of those themes, and it's easy for people to say like, oh, all Ryan does is subvert your expectations, and it's like, I mean, he does, but stories are not there to give you what you want.
No,
I mean, there is
interpret them. There's an interpretation factor to it, but they don't have to pander to what you want to see. I think there was something magical about how JJ did Force Awakens, because he kind of brought it back to what we loved and brought it back to looking more real. And I think that's what we needed for Force Awakens. And then The Last Jedi pushes it forward. It looks into what Mortis did. It looked into what Ahsoka became. It started to kind of separate itself from, you know, black, white, Jedi, Sith. It started to do that. And when you remember, you guys, when we first saw that trailer, it is time for the Jedi to end.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I really
chills
thought
through everyone's spines down at
I mean, I really thought they were going to go beyond the Jedi and actually do end the Jedi Order and move forward, which I think they kind of copped out of it at the end of the film. But
which makes me wonder, though,
if there was
how much we can blame JJ really for some of the shortcomings of Episode 9, and how much was it corporate meddling. And when I say corporate meddling, I don't mean Lucasfilm. I mean Disney.
Yeah, like you there are things that you can't not have. You know, like we need Jedi because that's like in the world's lexicon at this point. Like it's an interesting conversation. You know, especially with JJ like coming back for 9 and just trying to reconcile. Like I push back on the he retconned 8 and he ignored all of 8. That's just not it's factually
it's not true. It's
like
not true.
The entire relationship between Rey and Kylo is a direct continuation of 8.
Yes.
With, you know, not just with the Force, but just like with their dynamic and having Poe and Finn in leadership roles and more committed and all of that stuff. There are things that obviously drop the ball, like Rose and stuff like that are egregious. And I think it's because JJ, like I said, is kind of like addicted to creating things. That's why he loves to hop on a show as an executive producer, or just do one season, like with Lost or the pilot, or he comes back to Star Wars, and instead of saying, let me flesh out Rose more, he creates 5 new characters.
Yeah, it's like I'm starting again from the beginning at the last film when it's supposed to be a conclusion.
He creates Janna, Dio, Zori Bliss, General Pride, and I think there's one more that I'm forgetting, but Babu Frick. He goes all the way back to I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna create 5 more characters you're gonna love.
Instead of fleshing out those,
them. They're cool.
But instead of fleshing out the original characters that are already there and actually make a conclusion, he actually did another introduction.
Yeah. So he's a really interesting guy in that way, where it's like I would almost rather have J.J. Abrams executive producing something like Rangers for Disney Plus, and like I don't want him back for movies, but if he's there, like here's a bunch of money, let's cast some kick-ass actors, and then I'm gonna sit back, maybe direct one episode, and then I'll see you later. Like that's what he loves to do. JJ loves to
get things started.
He loves to get things started. Like he would be the most amazing person to work for. Like thinking about like the way he must be as a boss, like having creative meetings and like coming in and all of that.
And these ideas and the actors and the chemistry and everything. Yeah, he is fantastic at getting things started.
Yeah.
I mean, he is. But he needs to accept, or other people need to accept, the fact that he can't conclude things.
And that's the thing, is that when it comes to now,
apart from that,
now Trevorrow gets kicked off, and so they have a couple of decisions to make. Like, who do we get?
Do you have any thoughts? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you have any thoughts on the Trevorrow script?
Yeah, I don't like it.
Interesting. Why not?
I think that there's good in it for sure. I love Stormtrooper Rebellion as an idea. I love the Coruscant being like this fallen city state,
Yeah.
like with the guillotine and like the laser Phasma being there, and
Yeah.
there are things in it that are cool. I think that the problem with that script is that it doesn't understand the light and the dark as much as I think it thinks it does. Like that script ends with Rey having to tap into like necessary rage and like becoming something in the middle and like all this stuff, which is not what Star Wars is saying. It's saying choose light, but don't be hampered down by rules. It's not saying go in the middle of light and dark and like make an in-between choice. And the whole thing feels like half measures in a certain way of like both Luke, Leia, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Anakin all fail in that script at redeeming Ben. Then why do we have them in the script? You know, what was the point then of like, it just feels like it's trying to, that script is trying to excite, like it's amping it up, you know, giving Kylo this new weird metal half face mask thing, and it's going like Rey with a double saber, which would have been cool, but like Rey and all that artwork for that movie is wearing the Mark Hamill black outfit. Like, why? Because the whole point of the end of Last Jedi was that she was in her gray and then she pushes it away. You know, she closes the door on Kylo, literally. And so it's Duel of the Fates to me is again, it's not horrible, but there's just so many things in it that just feel like cool for coolness sake. And then it ends and it's like your name was Rey Solana. And it's like, what, just so we could combine Solo and Organa?
And I hated the whole Rey with Poe thing.
Rey with Poe.
That made no sense to me, honestly.
Yeah, there are things in it that are cool, but it's just it is definitely trying hard to be badass and not trying hard to be like, because again, for all of Rise of Skywalker's faults, it's not trying to be a badass movie. Like two of its biggest moments are Rey healing a snake that they find, you know, just being nice. And then Rey
just being nice.
Just being nice. And then Rey and Palpatine, she doesn't even swing at him.
Yeah.
They don't actually fight.
Yeah.
He destroys himself, you know, which is such a dark side thing.
Yeah.
In Duel of the Fates, it's called Duel of the Fates because Trevor thought like that would be like, oh, it's a cool callback, but like, why is that the Duel of the Fates? You know, Filoni explained that it's about parents and their kids and wanting what's best. And so that script was just like, I'm glad that it wasn't Trevor, to be quite honest, because I think the Jurassic World is the worst version of Force Awakens. Like Jurassic World's doing that. Yeah, it's doing that for Jurassic Park. But not
what
as well
did you
as
think of like what George Lucas would have wanted to do with it, with Darth Maul being your final bad guy?
And that's the weird thing, right? Is that like the weird thing about George is that depending on where you talk to him,
he has a different answer.
He has a different
7,
story.
8, and 9. Because so like that book came out, the prequel archives, that says it was going to be Maul and Talon as your two villains. He had to have given that quote between 99 and 2005, because I think that's what the book covers, is the prequel era. Now,
well, I think I have the book, but it's back in Chicago, so I haven't been able to read it. But I think
that's a new quote about back then.
It might have been like a new interview that Paul Duncan did with George while he was prepping for this book.
Okay,
I'm not sure though.
Yeah. Either way, it had to have been referencing plans that were then of some kind, because when you ask George, we know that old Luke would have been a thing. Female Jedi would have been a thing. And he gives this Maul Talon plan, which apparently was a big enough plan that there were meetings. Like, it wasn't just an idea. Like, apparently he came into Lucasfilm with like the Maul and Talon like maquette statues and like put them together. Like, there's that whole story. But he also gave that interview where he said that his sequel trilogy would have been about the microbiological world of the Force and the wills and the midichlorians.
Oh, really?
So it's
he was
like,
gonna go into
he said he would have tripled down on that.
I would have watched it.
He would just go down into midichlorians. Oh my god!
But it would have been the
as they're known
micro
now,
world of the Force.
M
M
counts.
counts. Just say it, Favreau. Just say it.
Yeah.
Just
so
say
it's
it.
like,
Just own it.
would it have been a trilogy about old Luke and his young Jedi girl
Microscope.
Padawan, and then Luke dies, and then Leia becomes the master, and they go into the microbiological world of the Force to fight Darth Maul?
Sounds
So
interesting.
that's what happens when you explain all of it at once.
That's
one of those reasons that I don't take George Lucas too seriously.
Yeah,
Because
And he
every
changed
time I
his
hear,
mind
I
a bunch
take
of
the
times, I
man
think.
seriously,
Yeah.
but what he says changes
Yeah.
all the time.
oh yeah, exactly.
Because then Mark Hamill said that George told him that Luke doesn't die until the end of 9,
exactly.
that he makes it through the trilogy and then dies.
I don't
So
know.
it's
Another
like
time he said it was gonna be how many movies? 12 movies or something.
12 movies.
And Boba
And
Fett was the main
also,
villain of the second trilogy. and I
That
was like,
quote
what the hell?
about that quote, yeah, even if it's a new interview, I just thought of it has to have been referencing plans of that time, because then 2008, 2009 rolls around and he tells Dave, you're bringing him back in Clone Wars.
Mhm.
So at that point, he might have been
Okay.
like, oh, I still want to use
Maybe
Maul.
I
I'll
kinda
just put him in the
want him.
cartoon. Like, yeah. So it's like,
Keep him alive, see what happens, but then
Yeah.
kill him in the cartoon
so it's like,
again.
I love George Lucas. I would
But
take
he-
a
But
bullet
he only
for
dies
George
in the
Lucas.
cartoon after George, though.
Exactly.
Fine.
But this man is like, the amount of ideas and plans that he's had.
No.
So it's
I
like,
think some of the things he says is just to troll people, Frank.
So going back to other directors, Rogue One,
We
Rogue
still
One,
Solo.
Mr. Gareth Edwards.
kinda,
Kinda. I mean, how much
for the
really-
most part.
For the most part, I think the only things that wasn't he involved in those reshoots? I'm not
Yeah,
actually sure.
he still gets credit. Like, he played ball. Like, he was like a good company, guy when that all went down. But Gareth Edwards, like, with the assist from Tony Gilroy, who's now running the Cassian Andor show, Andor. But yeah, so I think that what Gareth Edwards does really well is the enormity of Star Wars. Like, the Death Star, the Star Destroyers, Jedha, like that, all the Scarif Shield Gate, like it feels
The Shield
just
Gate was fantastic. Yeah.
massive.
second best space battle since Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, like that whole movie it just feels like you finally understand like the breadth of the war.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I think that I really appreciated about Gareth with Rogue One that they're doing now with Mandalorian is bringing in genre into Star Wars, because all the main saga films are the space opera fantasy trope, and now with Rogue One you got that war film, the heist film type of thing, where like it's more or less what the Russos did with Winter Soldier by bringing in the crime thriller aspect to comic book heroes. So like injecting new genres into like a type of movie that has not worn out its welcome, but worn out the genre that it's been in the sandbox that it's been playing on. So it was a breath of fresh air to see like that inherent violence of war, the war of Star Wars finally in a movie, and see like regular troopers, because none of our main heroes in Rogue One are Jedi or like these epic heroes like they are in the main saga films. They're just like regular grunts, just trying to do a job for the rebellion, and see the grit that they're engulfed in. I think was
And we know they all die too, which I mean, at least for us fans, because a lot of people that don't watch it have no idea what it is. But us people that go into it, as soon as it's Rogue One, oh yay! I kind of don't want to get attached to anybody because I know they're gonna all die. But the movie still manages to get you attached to all those characters.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact. And then I still cry when they die, even though I knew it was coming.
because they all die in important ways, right? They all like have a death that affects the plot and each other. So it's not just like a gratuitous death like from any horror movie. It's just like picking off people because we have to go to the final girl. Like in any normal 80s movie, horror film, has gravitas.
They really made you understand that everything that was happening was in service of the original trilogy in terms of like those events. Like, now I watch New Hope and I watch Luke doing the trench run and I think about Galen and I think about Jin, And I think about, everyone that had to die to get there. And
Yeah.
you hear Obi-Wan talk about the Force, and you think about Chirrut and like how even though he couldn't use it,
Yeah.
he believed in it.
Yeah.
And he could feel it, even if he couldn't actually like shape it and, push and pull and all that stuff. So it offered like a unique perspective.
Yes.
And it's not my favorite of the new ones. I think out of the 5 new Star Wars movies, it's my least favorite, but it's still like good.
Really? Rogue
Yeah.
One?
There's something about Rogue One where there's a twinkle in the eye that isn't really there for me. Where I think it's because it's the least fantasy of the new ones, and maybe that's really my flavor. That there's just something about it like that, especially that first half that doesn't fully land for me. Even though it's good, like I'll watch Rogue One sometimes, even randomly, even though it's my least favorite. But like it has.
There was a myth element of it that was lacking for you.
Yeah, something like that, where I just feel like it was hard for me to connect with everyone in it. Like Chirrut and Cassian, I was like all about, whereas like Jin and Baze and Bodhi, it took me a little bit longer to come around on, even though I really did like Krennic. So it's like a mixed movie for me, but ultimately still like a great universe movie, especially when you were also watching Rebels like as it was coming out. That really too.
Well, it's such refreshing to, because it was the first spin-off film, right? So it was so refreshing to see what Star Wars can be when it's not tethered to the main saga. And it was like you said, like because you had like all this new content with the Rebels, and now that movie was like, oh my god, finally the world is starting to be bigger than than just the Skywalkers.
Yeah.
But interesting, because for me, Rogue One is like it's gravy. It's a chef's kiss, because I don't know. I felt more or less that same way, Alden, that you mentioned with Rogue One, but with Solo. For me, Solo, and not because of Ron Howard, which we'll discuss obviously, but I don't know. Solo just didn't do it for me. Or you're gonna say, Mo? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh.
You forgot where you were saying, Mo.
I forgot what I was saying. So yes.
So yes.
But yes. No, but I think to Alden's point that Rogue One, everything feels like, oh yes, we're in space. Everything is like out of proportion. Everything is like, and you feel the gravitas of like everything that's leading into. We all know it's gonna lead into A New Hope. So it's, to me, it's always interesting. How do you manage the expectations of a film you already know its end? And I think that's what it does kind of well. Like it just gives the elements for you to get excited again to rewatch A New Hope. And I think that's where the magic is. Like I to this day, every time I finish watching Rogue One, my first thought is like, I just want to watch A New Hope.
Yeah.
It just
leads
like,
you into it. Yeah.
I think maybe it's like that backstory that leads you into the myth. Like now you want to understand, like, oh wait, I have like all of this going on. What's the myth? Why am I being pulled into this? And then you also have that awesome scene at the end with Darth Vader.
The Darth Vader hallway scene is something else.
Yes.
It definitely is.
It's great, and it hits even harder now that we've seen the light side version.
Which is something that's just, again, pet peeve. Every time like people put both pictures saying like my father before me, I'm like, no, that's the opposite.
Different.
That's the opposite of what you should get from those scenes, because they are opposite scenes. Yeah, they look cool because it's both people like in hallways, but they're not like he was before him. He's the opposite of what he was then. So I don't know. I just have to get that out, because every time I see this, it's like, no, you're missing the point. It's not about pew-pews and lightsabers in a hallway.
Yeah.
It's about the meaning of light and dark.
It's about
who they
defense. Like Vader was slaughtering innocents. Luke was only in that hallway being a badass because a child asked for help.
Yep. And he was destroying droids that were repurposed for evil purposes. Who knows what went exactly into that construction? Because they kind of hint at the fact that a lot of people were murdered in that process because they have
Yep.
to remove the humanity from those droids.
Exactly. And the droids are trying to oppress and destroy, while the rebels in the hallway were trying to escape and liberate.
And they are screaming
in
for
terror.
help. I mean,
As they should. As they should.
because it is Darth Vader.
Amazing.
Yes.
But anyway, but going then into to kind of wrap up, I think today's conversation, because I think we've
Long.
had a good and healthy convo. Now the final of the theatrical directors, Ron Howard, and who infamously replaced, I always forget their name, Phil Lord.
Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Are they?
Or
I always
Solo?
think that they're siblings for some reason.
No, they're not.
I always think
I forget
that
how
they're
they
like
became
the
buds.
Wachowskis or something.
Maybe through college or something, but yeah, they were with a little bit of Star Wars background too. I think they were interns or something during the special editions, something like that. One of them was a stormtrooper in the special editions.
I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so
So
cool.
what did you think about Solo then?
Me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Alden.
I
Sorry.
have the inverse again, where I love Solo.
Damn.
Where I will pick Solo over Rogue One
Any
100
day.
times out of 100.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Explain, please. Because I have my
love
issues with
Solo. I know
Oh.
a lot of people do, and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Solo, to me,
Mhm.
and this might have to be the thread at some point soon. The next thread.
The new one.
Solo
Season
is Solo is the most romantic Star Wars movie. Solo is the twinkle in the eye that for me wasn't in Rogue One. Solo is all
was
twinkle
fleshed
in the
out
eye.
in this one.
It's like
Where it's like where it, yes, it's hitting a bunch of stuff. You know, it's hitting your, how do you get the blaster? How do you get the ship? How do you meet Chewie? How did he? It's doing a lot of how did he? You know, especially with the last name. But the idea of Han as a cynic in A New Hope, every cynic is a disappointed idealist. So for me, it wasn't a story of like, what is this young man like as a young rascal or like a young badass? I like that he was a goof who was in love, because I think that is the natural point that you end up with a guy who thinks he's a badass, because people misremember Han as being cool. He's not cool.
He was always the goof.
He's always a goof.
Yeah.
But he dressed it up with an air of cool, like, you know, sorry about the mess, you know, flips the credit and like kills Greedo and all that stuff. Like, you know, the asteroid field, like, yeah, he could navigate the asteroid field, but the ship was falling apart the whole time. Like, you're a horrible mechanic. You know, Chewbacca is holding this together. Like, so all of that spirit is there in the movie, where knowing Kira and what she meant to him really connected me to his decision in New Hope to come back for his friends, because it's a decade later. We see that it must have bothered him so much that he couldn't make it work here. And the fact that in Force Awakens, old Han is telling, you know, Rey that, oh, I'll give you a job. I'm thinking about bringing on a second mate, you know, for the Falcon. And she says, no, I have to get back to Jakku. Now that we know that all he wanted was to get back to Corellia, you know, so him and Kira could have their, you know, their dream of their ship and everything, it starts to fit into the overall a little bit more. And I think that there's like so many love stories at play that are so like classic and George. It's like the two teenagers, very American Graffiti, you know, we don't really understand the world, but we think we've got it. Fast cars, you know, pickpockets and stuff. Very Grease, very American Graffiti, very.
And the fact that Ron Howard was in American
Ron
Graffiti.
Howard brings that as well. And then it's, you know, a boy in his car, you know, with the Falcon, like love at first sight. That's the most love at first sight thing that Star Wars has ever done, is when he looks up and, you know, they just let it breathe when he's walking through the clean hallways and everything. And then it's a buddy romance, you know, between him and Chewbacca, and how they find that common ground, that Chewie doesn't stay with him out of a life debt like he did in Legends. It's not that he has to. He chooses to, because he sees that this kid has so much heart. And my last thing about it is that it is like 500 Days of Summer, but for Star Wars. Like, he keeps telling Kira when they reunite that he's so glad he found her, and they're making out in the closet, and like, this could be like it used to be, and like, we're going to get our ship, and this is what we always dreamed of. And she keeps telling him, I've changed, I've changed, I've changed, I've changed. You don't get it. things are different now. I've seen things, I've done things. Like you can tell that she's matured so much in 3 years, and he wants things to be the romanticized
the
version
same. Yeah.
of how things could, and that to me, that crushing blow of the Star Wars movie that ends the smallest. It ends in an office. It ends in a fight in an office, and then on a beach, and that brokenheartedness of when she leaves wakes him up to the fact that people will disappoint you, which Beckett had told him. And it just informs that character so much, where now I look at Force Awakens, and when he says, she goes, so you are Han Solo. And he goes, I used to be. Knowing that he created that, and that someone tried to use that as a joke on him when he was a kid, like Han Solo. Like, yes, it's silly, and it is totally a movie studio saying, we want to see how he got the name. Totally. But in the story, it's all good outlaws like Billy the Kid, and Jesse James, like all those guys, they got these nicknames put on them. So the fact that now as an old man, he says, I used to be, like, he feels like he didn't earn, the coolness that he tried so hard to create, the mystique. I think about that kid version of him so much now when I watch that they connect so well. And that's basically my whole Solo rant, is just how, like, that movie is so like American teenager. It's like that whole movie is him looking at the twin sons, the entire thing. And just how much of the type of life that he commits to, and like what that will do to you. So yeah,
I mean,
I have to rewatch Solo again.
It's interesting though, because it's not that I disagree with anything you've said, because I definitely see everything that you mentioned, like in that movie. But for me, the issue with the movie itself is that all of those things are there, but based on the amount of things that happen and all those plots that you're bringing up, it somehow feels like the movie would have been in better service to itself if it had been like a limited series, or
like a 6-episode thing,
or a show or something.
Yeah,
because,
I don't disagree.
Because I remember when I was watching the movie, I was really excited, especially like during the first quarter of the movie when they're just in Corellia, because I'm like, oh, we finally get to see Han in Corellia and how he develops into being Han Solo. And I didn't expect Han Solo to be Han Solo in one movie. I expected to be part of Han Solo in the one movie, and maybe that first movie would have just covered, him in Corellia, and maybe being an Imperial and his defection and all that stuff. I didn't really expect the greatest hits of everything everything that he mentioned in the OT. He
Kessel
did in his
Run
first,
and
everything he
everything
is
in
famous
one
for
movie,
in one adventure.
The only thing that they like had the only thing that they felt was okay to hold back was like Boba Fett and Jabba. Basically.
Exactly. That's the sequel, though. So that's kind of like, for me, why the movie didn't. And it's not that I don't like the movie. I do like it. So I think there's a lot of really good elements into it, especially with Beckett and his crew. I think that those whole dynamics are really good.
Yeah.
But the fact that like they stuffed the movie with so much plot of, like you said,
greatest hits.
So what about this? That you were mentioning.
Yeah.
Make the movie
Lando and the whole
like triple
all in one,
itself.
like
Yeah, it's a lot. It's totally a packed thing, and I completely get that too. And even with Rogue One, like you're saying, like even with it being one that I'm not like huge on, still love the movie. Like I'm still it's Star Wars, so I love it. I think about Leslie Headland, gave that interview where she was talking about how people ask her now, especially now that she's running a Star Wars show, they ask her like, what's your favorite Star Wars movie? She says, I don't have a favorite Star Wars movie. She goes, I love Star Wars. She goes, it's there is only Star Wars.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, there is that.
That's true.
And I feel like as you go through life and different experiences affect you in different ways, you start seeing the films in different ways as well. So your favorites kind of change and you see them in different ways. And they add something different every time to watch it, in my opinion. I think that's one of the best things about Star Wars. It's like depending on what time in your life you watch them, they add a little extra.
And that's the power of myth.
And that's the power of myth. That's the difference, because Star Wars is not sci-fi. It's myth set in space.
And that's what I think that Ron Howard brought to it that was really cool, you know,
Mhm.
tying in with American Graffiti and all that.
Yeah.
Is that his approach was, he isn't like, I mean, not that J.J. Abrams is like a young man, you know, I think he's closer to 50 nowadays.
Yeah.
But, you know, him and Ryan, you know, being more of the middle age, Ron is older, you know, he's of the George generation. He has that seasoned like journeyman way of like, how do I remember youth? You know, like you could have packaged Solo for me as Han telling this story in a bar and just slapped that on the front, slapped it on the end, and it would have had that flavor that Ron sort of brings to it, where that's, you know, that Corellia car chase is just like so George Lucas, and the beach standoff with Enfys Nest, and all of that stuff about Enfys being the first rebel and not even realizing that she was the first rebel, you know, because she's defending, you know, that planet, and the train heist and just all of that stuff is like a Western, but it's also like a high school movie, like the Kessel
heist
Run
film too.
a heist film. Like the Kessel Run feels so much like, you know, we got to get home. You know, the Kessel Run feels to me like Ferris Bueller running home, you know, to get like, you know, home before his parents do. Like it sort
So
of
I don't
has
get in trouble.
that small vibe. Yeah.
John Hughes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see more Star Wars stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I would love to see a Star Wars film even smaller than Solo. Like one that's like, we have to get from one end of like a city on Coruscant to the other or something like that.
I mean, I think that's why Disney Plus is such a exciting platform for all of the Star Wars content, because it
You
allows
can explore
for things like that. It's like, instead of having like back when we were growing up, the Disney Channel original movies every first Friday of the month or whatever it was, you get the Disney Plus original movie, and it's those smaller Star Wars films instead of Brink or Alley Cat Strike or something like that. It's the same thing, but Star Wars universe.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the cool things now with the High Republic coming out, especially with all the slate of books that they have. There's, you know, books for different consumption levels, right? There's the Char Soul, Light of the Jedi, for quote unquote adults. Then the Claudia Gray young adult books. Justina Ireland is doing like for the younger readers, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then Kevin Scott doing the regular comic book run on Marvel, and Daniel Jose Older doing the young readers comic version. So it's, again, you know, expanding that universe for different scales and different demographics. So it's definitely exciting time to move forward in Star Wars into 2021.
Absolutely.
So I think with this, we are probably done because we've been going on for a while. I'm
As
sorry.
usual.
We make you talk so long, Alden.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We're gonna have to turn this into a trilogy.
Yeah.
On game.
Try it.
Game.
But the third one's gonna be the weird. It's gonna be super weird.
Oh, the weird one, like the all of us on that glowing pirate ship in Seoul.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
that
we
needs
have to
to be the
write-
next one.
We have to
A
end it
combination
weird.
of that with like Ragnarok and like just going all weird.
Super colors. We should put like a color filter over the cameras and stuff.
And be all
Do
the background of Wonder Woman, like the background
Some
and
rock and roll. I'll take like red paint and do like Thor in the
dude,
arena
and everything like
Yeah,
Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and just Bowie.
Yeah, I'm game.
Okay,
Show your shirt. You have the Bowie shirt.
I get the all the.
I cry still for Bowie.
He's not dead. He's in space, so he'll be in a Star Wars movie soon.
He's hanging
went
out with
home.
Freddie Mercury up there in space. Yes.
Yep, and Prince. Yeah.
And Prince. Oh,
I'm game.
yeah. So we have to go all Purple Rain weird
Yes.
for the last episode of the trilogy. Yeah. We have to find the weirdest things in Star Wars and comment on those. I feel like that will be a good episode.
The weirdest things. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
definitely.
do some research.
We shall do some research. Well, anyway, Alden, thank you so much for coming back on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there will be a trilogy episode.
Yeah, whenever you guys will have me in your new year, I am game. 2021 is going to be good. I can feel it.
Yes.
And whenever you want to join, you're the fourth Puerto Rican. We can be a quad whenever you want.
Whatever for Triad is that.
I think it's a quad. Quad.
A
Is it what?
quad, a
Yeah.
quadrilogy, a quad,
Quadrilogy.
a quad,
Cuatro.
quadrant.
Somos cuatro.
Quadrant. The
Yeah.
quadro.
I don't know.
If we don't find the word, we'll make up a word.
Exactly.
Los cuatro.
Exactly.
Los cuatro de Star Wars. Could happen. Who knows? Could be a thing.
Hey, spin-offs are a thing now.
That's the
There you go.
thing. I love it.
But anyway, again, Alden, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me talking Star Wars on my Star Wars interview podcast, Ahch-To Radio. That's on everywhere your podcasts are found, all the platforms, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. Ahchto Radio. There's going to be a couple new shows on that same feed coming up in 2021. So if you're already an Ahch-To Radio subscriber, this is all free. We're just branching it out. So there's going to be a couple new shows, couple new voices that either pop up with me or that I will be like presenting, like Ahch-To Radio presents, and then we'll expand that out a little bit. And then also starting in January, although you're hearing this, so it might be January already. It's going to be
We'll see. No one knows.
we don't. It's rolling the dice. It's going to be a new show hosted by myself and Nikki Kumar and Reed Devaney from the Imperial Senate podcast and Co Bibbles, Babble Bubble, other Star Wars shows. Our show now is going to be called the One and Done Film Club. So basically, the way it works is the One and Done Film Club, 3 of us, who will sit there and pick a movie franchise like Star Wars, like Lord of the Rings, like Harry Potter. And at the beginning of the episode, we will have a discussion and debate and pitch which one installment of that whole series are we going to do a commentary on right then and there. So
no preparedness,
just your argument. So if we go in and we have a 3-way discussion and we figure it out, and by the end of the discussion, we're like, all right, we're watching Attack of the Clones. Then we're going to get the movie up and hit play. And we're talking about Attack of the Clones. And so only one movie gets into the club by the end from all series. We're talking Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Mission Impossible, James Bond.
One gets in.
The Marvel Cinematic
everything.
Universe.
Damn, James Bond's going to be complicated.
That's going to be
Marvel is going to be hard.
Marvel, we're going to break Marvel into phases.
Okay.
So there's
because if you do all
so
of
James
Marvel,
Bond,
it's going to be a problem.
James Bond,
would be like Sean Connery.
Well, some of them don't have enough, so I'm thinking that maybe it'll be like the James Bond decades or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sounds like fun.
We're gonna find a way, and we're gonna start building out the club coming up soon.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
That sounds really fun. Yeah.
So looking forward.
Definitely looking forward to that one.
Yep. Well, and for all of our fans, like, subscribe, follow. We're taking a little break for the holidays, but we shall be back. There's a lot of Star Wars content coming, and there's always nerd stuff to talk about. So always. So love you guys. Thank you for coming. May the force be with you.
Feliz Año Nuevo.